Do you need some relationship advice? Do you have marital problems or questions? Perhaps you want to get married and you have questions for us. Please send your thoughts or questions to ItTakes2 at SafeerTV.com.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Welcome to another edition of It Takes Two, where we look at, from a psychological point of view and a Islamic philosophical point of view, scenarios and challenges that come up in marriages. This week I have with me my co-host, Sister Ruby, and this week also we have Sheikh Ahmed Hanif. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
So let's, if that's okay with yourselves, let's jump into the first scenario, the first letter that I'd like to read. This is from a individual who says, "Dear It Takes Two, my husband is an angry man. At the beginning of our courtship, he was amazing, loving, caring and attentive. Once we married, things changed. He became aggressive, controlling and difficult to please. On some occasion, he has hit me. The arguments between us will escalate from the smallest matter. On one occasion, it was because I had not prepared his food how he liked it. And I am truly frightened and unsure about what to do." Very, very difficult situation from an anonymous sister. What's the first port of call? Where do we start from? It sounds like domestic violence. How do we proceed, Sheikh?
Absolutely. Well, I think she really needs to find some kind of professional help for that relationship. You know, I think a lot of abusive relationships begin exactly like this. The man is a really sweet guy. The woman thinks this is great marriageable material. She marries him, and it's a Jekyll and Hyde type of thing. He becomes an entirely different person. And I think he is an entirely different person, because for a lot of people of men who abuse women, it is a learned behavior. You know, they either see it in the relationship between their parents, all right, or they might have had some kind of negative and abusive relationship with their mothers, you know, and so they're playing this out. Before, when they were courting, that woman did not fall within that particular context.
How do you mean?
You see, the abuse takes place within the marital or family context, all right? When the man is put into that particular context, then that other Mr. Hyde
is triggered. It's
triggered.
Yeah.
Outside of that context, this is just a bachelor woman that he's interested in, that he's talking to, and he finds a certain interest in. That's fine. Okay?
Doesn't need to exert power. Doesn't feel the need to exert power over.
Now he gets into a different scenario. Okay, this pathology, because abusive tendencies are a pathology. Okay. That comes about from largely learned behavior that you witness among people, okay? Whether you're involved or others are involved, like your parents. Okay, you learn this behavior by being in that particular situation. So now going into that situation, this new or different or horrible person comes out. So I think, you know, you should know better than me, you know, but I think for the abuser, okay, he definitely needs some kind of psychological counseling, you know, some investigation into his past, some awareness of himself, you know. The onus is upon that abuser for that to happen.
Is it a willingness? What say you, sister?
I think I would take a different approach in saying that what's paramount is the safety of the woman here. She needs to find herself in a secure environment. If she really does have those fears, even if they haven't been actualized, she needs to find some kind of safety.
He actually has, according to what she said, he has been violent towards her, not just aggressive, but I think
my next piece of advice would be, somebody needs to know what happens in domestic violence situations is it's a vicious circle, and what makes this fire breed is that nobody knows.
So secrecy.
And for many women, it's firstly shock that this has happened to them. What do they do? And there's lots of feelings of shame, guilt. Where will they go? Paramount, and a number will be given at the end of this program. Safety. Safety is paramount. You have to make sure you are okay. You tell somebody what is going on, even if you don't want them to act upon it, but somebody needs to know what is going on. God forbid things should escalate, you always tell somebody. It can be, you can call anonymous numbers, there's people you can contact, and as I said, we'll give numbers at the end. But before anything else, safety. I'm really saddened by this. This happens a lot. And it also happens with men as well, that they're in domestic violence situations. But I think a lot of the time for women, it takes a long time for them to process what's happened because of the shock. And where do you go? And because you're so absorbed in getting over the shock, you can't think clearly. Because what happens with these people, and I call them manipulators in a negative sense, is that the Sheikh was talking about this Jekyll and Hyde personality. You may not be getting hit every day. It might be an emotional abusive situation where something is
financial
said,
abuse, all different types of abuse,
all
take
types
place.
of things. The next day, this person may come across as the best thing since sliced bread. So you're confused. You're like, oh, maybe it's something I did, maybe it was the environment. And a lot of these people, they always back it up with an excuse. You made me do it, something triggered it off, it's not me. They then fall into the victim that you have to comfort them until the next time it happens. So my advice is, first and foremost, make sure you're secure, somebody knows, and then seek outside help.
Does this sister need to, is this a thing that we would be advising her to leave this relationship, this marriage, or is it something that they just need to seek help, or is there room for?
I think before any of us answer that question, because it's different for everybody.
Each situation is unique.
I do not want to advise anybody to stay in any abusive situation. God forbid something happens. That's not what we're saying. What we're saying is, in this incident, because we're not trained counsellors in this situation, and I don't want to take on the liability of something happening to somebody, but what we will say is, let's presume the sister's in a safe environment and she's analysing what's happened and what the next step is. Let's answer it from that perspective, that she's in a safe environment. Let's make that very clear. We're not promoting anyone to
I did want to clarify that, because like as a psychotherapist, I've worked with people in this type of scenario, and one of the things that I'm aware of is that well, in therapy you don't advise people. You help them to explore the issues and possibilities that are available to them in life in general, and gaining their own agency. But oftentimes people in violent relationships, or abusive relationships, they almost like lose, it's almost like being in a cult or something like that. They lose that capacity to really think for themselves or act in a kind of separate way from that relationship. They lose themselves in that relationship, you know. So I just wanted to kind of explore, from maybe an Islamic point of view, is there a particular protocol? Is it approaching a sheikh or a religious institution to speak to this individual who's a husband or something like that? Because it's not a secular situation. This is a Muslim sister. So how does that play out?
Well, I mean, you know, from an Islamic point of view, physical abuse of women is haram. Okay, it's haram to physically abuse women in particular, and anybody in general. Okay, and you know, that being said, then you know, it behooves the community to be able to have those structures in place to deal with that. Okay. Which could run the gamut from as extreme as treating abuse as a crime, okay, to treating abuse as something that is treatable, okay, where you can save a marriage, you know. So it all depends upon where that abuse is on that particular continuum, you see. And so the community has to be aware that it has the choice, okay, of flexibility and trying different means by which one could eliminate the abuse and preserve the marriage, okay, or eliminate the marriage and get rid of the abuse.
Yeah.
And you find in that situation, we have some problems in our community.
A lot of the time, from a female perspective, what you will find is females do not want the marriage to dissolve. They're looking for a way to fix the situation.
In these type of situations?
In these type of situations. And it's not just for Muslims. They want the person that they fell in love with back. They don't understand. They want to help in this person's recovery because it is an illness. I think what needs to happen, because predominantly it's a male issue in our community. Yes, we do have the roles reversed. But there is a movement in Atlanta called Muslim Men Against Domestic Violence, and it's led by the youths. And it's educating men, and I'm not giving excuses for it, about triggers, about things that have happened to them psychologically, about environmental factors. You know, they may have had a really stressful time at work. The only person that they can take it out on is the weakest person or the person who's next to them, which would be their spouse. We need education from a young age. We're in an environment where violence is everywhere and it can seep in. It's in music, it's in video games. I'm not
Popular
justifying
culture
it,
is saturated with violence.
but I think it needs to come from our sheikhs, and it needs to feed down into our youths, and it also needs to go into the women as well, because we have women who do this.
Why does it need to come from our sheikhs?
Because let's just be honest, a lot of time in our community, they are the ones that we look up to. They're the celebrities, they're the knowledge, they're the people that a lot of the youth look up to and think, oh, if he's doing it, then I'll do it. They have a sense of duty. I think, you know, when we don't have our imam present physically that we can all see, they have a duty, our scholars, to educate the community and try and help where possible to make our community better with whatever incidences they have. Another situation is, if, say, an imam is brought to the sheikh's attention, it's very difficult and awkward to get the brother into the office or wherever to have a discussion. That quite likely is going to cause some repercussions at home. That you've stepped outside the marriage and involved strangers in. This happens a lot. And that's why it's so shameful and embarrassing for women, and they keep it silent because they're worried about the repercussions. It really is a disease, not just in our community. And again, with everything, I think it starts with education. But what's also interesting is there isn't a lot of support from sisters, because people don't know how to deal with this situation. Imagine your friend comes and tells you, or your sister, that they're being hit by somebody. You don't know what to do with that information.
No, I know what to do with that information.
Well, most people do. No, like most people
sister, I know
don't.
what to do with that information already.
Most people don't.
But no, I take what you mean.
You're not speaking as a psychotherapist.
No.
You know that
You're speaking like a boxer.
it's interesting.
There's a boxer in me coming out.
Someone we know in our family in the Middle East, his sister was being abused by her husband, and she didn't tell him, but he had the inklings. They were very close. And I'm not recommending this approach, but one day he invited them for dinner, and he opened the door and he said, "Assalamu alaikum," and he boxed this brother in the face. And he said, "Now that I've done what you did to my sister, come in, there's no hard feelings." Never happened again. But it's different strokes for different folks. So it's like, now that we're equal, come and sit down.
Thank you for that piece of advice.
I'm not advising that at all, but what I'm saying is a lot of the time it's very difficult to know where to go. And with sisters, once somebody has fed that information to you, I don't know where to go. Are you telling me that because you just want someone to talk to? Do you want me to help? How am I meant to help you?
Interject here. If that abusive husband knows that wife of his that he abuses or would like to abuse has brothers, fathers, uncles, a family,
a community
that will act in her defense, okay, he will be less persuaded.
He'll be
restrained from being like this, okay? One of the problems is that in Western society,
so you're
societies
going-
tend to
yes,
become,
yes,
families
yes,
become isolated.
Isolation.
People don't want to get involved in your family business. That's one.
Isn't that what the role of abusers? Or they actually, don't hang out with sister souls. They're
Yes,
controlling and they
exactly.
They siphon the person off.
They separate you from
Yes,
your community.
yes, from your family,
so it
your
makes you
community,
more
your friends.
vulnerable.
Yes.
All right. Also, you find right in the Muslim community, people tending to abuse this idea that the man now is taking the role of the father. He's the biggest authority, and now this man started telling her, "Don't be in touch with your family.
Yeah, he
I'm
can't
the
come
authority in
over."
your life now. I want you here with the kids." What should happen is red lights should start going off in this woman's head. Okay? We are into the phase 1, isolation. Phase 2, abuse.
But it
You see?
happens so subtly, Sheikh. So you're in the situation, as I was saying, the processing time, it's so weird. Imagine that you're really in love with this person. I hate using the word love, but you want to make this marriage work, etc. Everyone in the community knows you're together, and then this happens, and it takes you by shock, and you're hoping. A lot of sisters are praying it away, that it goes away, and it starts off subtly. It's not always with a slap. It's a comment. It's something about your integrity. It's really under the skin until it flares up, and you don't see it coming. So when you're in the situation, you're cooking dinner and you get a slap, you're just thinking, let me just get through cooking dinner. Maybe after dinner he'll calm down until the next time it happens. So the signs aren't normally there. When a lot of the times when we're married, we do have a distance between our families and friends because some of our friends aren't married. Our responsibilities now change. So they can't relate to what you mean you have to be home by this time. Oh, because you haven't cooked dinner. That's so ridiculous what's happened to you. So you don't see the gradual changes that's happening.
The gradual. What about, just to flip it just for a moment, for brothers, because men tend to fall in the minority of victims of domestic abuse, let's put it that way, but they do exist. So what about for a Muslim brother that's in an abusive relationship? It might not be physical, but is there somewhere for them to go and talk? Yeah, psychological, emotional. Is there somewhere for them to go and talk? Is it something that brothers would be able to even feel like they could raise with a sheikh or somebody to get advice or to get help? Because it'd be so embarrassing. I mean, how could I admit to being bullied by my wife? How does that play out?
Yeah, I mean, you'd find that it's like the iceberg. A large majority of cases like these will go unreported. Because men would be very, embarrassed to talk about themselves being emotionally or physically abused by their wives, right? But this is why I think, education in the community is extremely important. Belonging to a healthy Muslim community, where you have ulama, sheikhs, who are well educated in these matters, become very important, where they are approachable.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, for a lot of sheikhs, they are seen in a kind of up on a pedestal, alienated type of a thing, which does not encourage, heart-to-heart communication. You see, and it becomes problematic. But clearly, what I think the first thing that we need is in our community to open this discourse, to talk about domestic abuse on all levels, spousal domestic abuse of elderly parents.
Yes, very common.
The violent and other types, sexual abuse and violent abuse of children. Things like this. We need to talk about these things. Because people don't know how to process this when it happens to them. You see, all of the discussions in the Sunday classes and so forth didn't touch upon that. You didn't have
life skill lessons.
Life skills,
emotional intelligence
things.
and emotional.
None of these things were talked about. You see, and most likely the sheikh who is in charge of the community, his head is in the sand. Okay, especially if he's an import from India, to speak to a homogeneous ethnic community, right? You know, they don't talk about abuse and these types of things.
Or it's left for the ladies to discuss it and the men don't discuss it. I think what's sad is that
That's not acceptable.
it's not acceptable and it's not okay. This religion is about mercy. And if you don't have mercy amongst each other as spouses, there's a problem, a fundamental flaw, and it needs to be addressed. I agree at a young age, and I think men need to have the discussion with men as well. What are the triggers? Why are you so
Yes.
angry? Women, be careful with your words. You know, be careful. A lot of, in certain cultures, they're very physical, the women, because they want a reaction. They'll be in your face. I'm not saying they deserve to be hit or anything, but not
There's a
every
context to the reactions.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
People, you know, have their own red flags. We need to discuss, you know, what happened to compassion, mercy, and humanity. We're adults. Why are we acting like animals? If you can't get your point across, is a fist going to do it? But I think we need to talk about it, definitely.
Is there something that people can do? Well, mainly sisters seem to be falling the victims of these type of scenarios. Is there something that people can do before they get married? Married, should I say? Are there signs and symptoms that we're looking for with people like this? We talk about the Jekyll and Hyde, but is it as much as you can know about somebody before you get married to them? Is there a certain type of investigation, certain type of inquiry, or things that people need to not be embarrassed to try and venture into to protect themselves in advance?
Sisters need to be able to, one, have self-esteem, and it's a community issue, it's a school issue, it's a holistic approach. Second issue is they need to be able to identify control. A lot of people get Islam and this idea of control confused or use it as a good guise to do whatever they want. It can start off very small. So if you're from a household and your father has never forced anything upon you, for example, hijab, you know you have to do it, but he's never forced it down your throat. You're getting married to somebody who knows you didn't wear hijab. Then as soon as you're engaged, he's interrogating you in the room for 3 hours as to, you're not doing this, you're disrespecting me. Do you see the pattern, the control? This is what you need to, sisters need education on what to spot. Someone who wants to change you for their own benefit, and a lot of the time sisters comply because they're the peace creators. A lot of the time, not all the time. You start losing your identity. We need to identify to sisters what is control, what is compassion, and what is manipulation. And sisters also need to learn when to step back, to choose their arguments wisely, and how to get their thoughts across. I don't have the answers, but I think we really need a holistic approach because there's something we're missing.
Just to bring you in, Sheikh, quickly, what can we do for our young brothers in terms of mentoring or raising awareness? Because we have a lot of Islamic education, a lot of public speakers and educators in the community, but oftentimes it seems to be around certain favorite subjects. And how do we create a social revolution in thought to be able to make issues like this not taboo or one-off seminars, but this is something that is like an integral part of our community activities in terms of raising awareness and educating? How do we create this environment?
I think we need to first and foremost revisit our idea of community, because I would venture to say we do not have an idea of community. Our idea of community is a sort of a default model, you know, where we think of community, for example, in terms of an ethnic subgroup in the Muslim population. Okay, we think of ourselves maybe fundamentally as Persian, or fundamentally as Iraqi, you know, fundamentally as Pakistani, you know, and we continue to operate in that particular orbit, you see, and in these communities there are things that are not discussed, for example. Okay, one example of things that are not discussed in many of these traditional Muslim communities is spousal abuse. We don't discuss this, you see. I think We need to change this idea of community as one that encourages healthy relationships and healthy behavior, right? You know, when the Holy Quran talks about Allah creating us as a middle community, you know, to exalt what is right and forbid what is wrong, okay? It indicates a healthy community, you see? And so within a healthy community, the older generation tends to mentor the younger generation. When I say older generation, I don't mean older people and younger people. I mean generation or age groups, you know. For example, 20-year-olds, you know, or people in their 20s mentor those in their teens. People in their 30s mentor those who are in their 20s. People in their 40s mentor those who are in their 30s. You know, this is how society grows. This is how society remains integrated. You see, the older group takes responsibility for acculturating the younger group into healthy behavior.
Inshallah.
You see?
Inshallah.
And I think this is something that we can do right here in this society, because sooner or later our ethnicity becomes secondary. You know, you are more British than you are Iraqi. You're more British than you are Pakistani, for example. All right?
Interesting.
You know, and therefore, as a Pakistani or as a young Pakistani born in this country, or a young Iraqi born in this country, we realize that we have much, much more in common than if we were born in Pakistan and in Iraq in two separate countries.
Interesting. Just we can carry this on after the break, but I just want to stop for a brief break, and we hope to see you on the other side. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.